It was only the bad luck, in a way, of the frontier closing that became our good luck, because the site of the shop was going to be something else. This was a brand new building, there was a bank next door, a supermarket, and in the middle it was going to be a Bland's travel agency. With the closing of the frontier, there was not much business for Bland's travel agency, so the site became vacant, and that was our good luck, that we were able to get one of the largest sites even then in Main Street.
A wise man once said, "The art of living lies less in eliminating the problems as in learning to grow with them." When John Welsh was forced to leave a successful business in Tangier in the 60s, Gibraltar looked like a good alternative, only Spain was looking to close the frontier. Behind this international brand is a very human story, a very local story.
The biggest challenge, and I wasn't part of it, was actually opening the business, because in those days we had come in a hurry from Spain, like a lot of people. We were not allowed to have residency in Gibraltar. My parents had to apply every 15 days to renew their residence. We lived in one room in a hotel for about 2.5 years, I think, until we were able to get the residence. After that, getting the permits to open a business was a problem, because again, as a British national, my father wasn't allowed to have a business. He needed to have a majority Gibraltarian partner, and he approached several business people with a view to going into business with him, and for one reason or another they never developed. And we were very fortunate that one of his best friends and customers, a man called Pepe Ventata, decided to help my father and go in with him and help him get it off the ground. Otherwise this business would never have got started.
John Welsh and my father were very good friends. In those days my father had a clothing shop, and John would come over and offer his samples of St. Michael goods, and we got on very, very, very well. John would come often to my parents' home for dinner and for talking and everything. And then at one point John asked my father that if he wanted to join him in opening a St. Michael's store in Gibraltar. Now this was the time when the frontier closed in 1969. Already from 67 we were hearing very bad things that were coming along. And my father thought, no, there's no point in opening a business now. It's too risky. So John went alone. My father just signed. In those days, if you were not a Gibraltarian, you couldn't have 100% ownership of a shop in Gibraltar, of a business in Gibraltar. You needed a Gibraltarian partner. So my father agreed to be the partner of record, so that John could open the shop. And really, it's been a success ever since. Ever since. He was a very fine man, John Welsh. Very fine man.
My father was born in 1910, poor family in York in England. He wanted to get away. He didn't have a happy childhood. So he left home when he was 16, 17, went to work in Leeds. Then in 1930 he went to London. In 1936 he got an offer to go to Nigeria for double the money. So he went to work in Nigeria for 11 years. After that, he got very ill in Nigeria with dysentery, malaria. Went back to the UK after the war, didn't want to stay, and he was offered a job in Tangier in Morocco. Unfortunately, his boss died, but he decided to carry on, and he had all his contacts from Nigeria, and he set himself up in business as a commission agent, a manufacturer's agent. So he would represent 200 companies, take all the orders from the shops. He would sell all the way from Tangier to Cairo. He would leave Tangier for 3 months every year and would travel through Tripoli, Tunis, Alexandria, selling all of his products. And then he would get on a cruise ship, come back to Gibraltar, where he had an office as well. So Tangier and Gibraltar were really his main offices. And when we had to get out of Tangier, it was natural to start his business in Gibraltar. I think he saw that the way of doing business that he was doing would die eventually. So he decided to concentrate on one brand, and he chose Marks & Spencer as his best brand. He let the others go, and he tried to open a shop, which is what eventually ended up happening in Gibraltar.
And we've had the laugh as well, eh?
Say, of course.
We had a great time.
We used to, we were, well, with the customers as well, we had to make sure, all our please and thank yous and everything.
Everything.
Because Mr. Walsh was very strict, but I think he was lovely, But at the same time,
How long the shop has been open? 45?
45 years, no?
45 years, no?
45 years. So I worked for 20, I've been on 12 now. So
That's it,
that's
isn't it?
32. So, but it's, I've enjoyed it anyway. So.
I've enjoyed it as well.
My father, only child, his brother died when he was very young. I never knew his family, he wasn't close to them. Both my mother, they both came from York, which is why the company, unimaginatively, is called York Limited. The company in Tangier was called York Limited. I'm an only child, and my wife and I, we work together. We have 3 children who at the moment show no signs of coming into this business. The 2 eldest ones are working in London. It's a small family business.
I remember my salary was going to be £6. This was in 1968. On the first Friday, he gave me £8. So I went up to him and said, I think there's something wrong. You've given me £2 too many. He said, no, I've seen you working on the sales floor and you deserve 8. They go, thank you very much. So he gave me 8.
So the same happens to me when I started working here,
He gave you less and then you
Yeah, that's right. And we realised that after a while, we said, why? I think it's so much more. We said, because you've been doing the job properly, you've been doing a good job.
I was born in Tangier, 1955. We stayed there till I was 6. When you're only 5, 6 years old, life is very innocent, and I had a really nice, quite lucky childhood there, I suppose. And we had to leave Morocco because they were nationalising European businesses. My father had a business in Gibraltar as well, so we moved across here. We lived in Campamento. I came to school every day here, he came to work. Campamento, major change, coming over, having spoken only French and English. I suddenly had to learn Spanish. All the Spanish kids laughing at my French because I couldn't tell the difference. Having to learn lessons in English because I had been taught in French at the age of 6, 7. But they're the things that make you a little bit. In 65, we had to come into Gibraltar because the frontier problems were starting. By then we had already started the business here. My father started that in 1968, and we employed some Spanish workers, some men as handymen, and they rang up one Sunday. My father was away on business, and my mother and I had to come and open the shop for them to collect their few belongings that they had, because it was the one day that they could come into Gibraltar. And we drove them down to the frontier, and the staff that we had, the 8 or 9, had all turned up basically to say goodbye. and I just felt these were two men in their probably 50s at their time who would never work again. And I met one of them 15 years, 20 years after that, and he never had worked again. And I thought that was quite bad. Teenage years, although I say Gibraltar was claustrophobic and difficult, I had a good time. We made the best of what we did. We went camping a lot. We used to go off to Morocco camping. I went to boarding school for a while, then came back to school here, went through the grammar school. I left in '73, never meaning to come back, to be honest, because the closed frontier, Gibraltar was quite claustrophobic, quite difficult.
So I met Tony back when I was 23. I met him in England. I used to live in London. My parents are from a place called Northwood, just outside of London, and I was working for Marks and Spencer's in the UK. I was a buyer, and Tony was on attachment to the Marks and Spencer's business, and I met him at Marks and Spencer's and started going out with him.
And we met in about 80. 81 we got married, and things were changing in Gibraltar with regard to Spain, and it looked like the frontier might have to open because Spain wanted to join the EU, the common market. So we came back here to basically make plans to do something with the business, to expand the business.
That was a bit of a shock because I was used to living in London. I came to Gibraltar and it was a closed frontier, and I probably didn't really know what I was letting myself in for because it was difficult being here with a closed frontier, having lived in London, but I did it.
I missed,
The wedding reception up in the Rock
the
Hotel,
Rock Hotel.
just by a month or something.
Eh?
Yeah, you all went
In
up
July,
there.
no, July.
He got married in the July, yeah.
Eh?
So that's going back a long time as well, yeah.
The year that we got married was when Princess Diana came out here. So just after I got married in June, they got married in July. And I always remember I'd been back here about 3 weeks, and I thought, oh gosh, what have I done? You know, here's this fairy tale princess, and she's just got married, and she's gone off on Britannia, and I thought, what have I done? I've got married, and I've moved out here, and it was all a bit of a shock.
Okay, we look at the development of a civilian population in Gibraltar after the capture. The first list we have is of 1725, and you can see from that the bulk of the civilians were Genoese and Spaniards. If we move on in time to the middle of the 18th century, you can see that there's been a very interesting change here, in that the Jews have now become the second largest element after the Genoese, and the Spaniards have dropped to fourth place. Now, the next chart, which is for 1777, is a very interesting one, because for the first time you've got a new column there, which is entitled here as Gibraltar. The word Gibraltarian wasn't used at the time, but what this column shows or represents is people actually born on the rock.
I started working with Marks and Spencer's on the 1st of April 1978. I started as an assistant. When the business was built, it was a closed frontier. We had the Mons Calpe coming in, and we had very good Moroccan customers as well. And but when the frontier opened, it's opened in a sense for the better, for business, for the better, for sure.
And one of the reasons why Tony came back in the first place had been that he knew that when Spain joined the EU, that the frontier would have to open with Spain. And that was why we then came back and we started to grow the business.
The next most important factor, I suppose, was the complete opposite, the reopening of the frontier, when Gibraltar was like the Mecca for all shopping in southern Spain. Southern Spain had not developed at that time. So we had a boom period of probably 5 to 6 years before Spain started to catch up.
When the frontier first opened for pedestrians, we were there on the first night it opened because it was very exciting to walk over to La Linea for the first time. We then, like many people, we bought a car in the UK and drove it down and left it on the Spanish side, and we used to walk across and get our car at the weekends, and we used to go off into Spain and exploring, and that was exciting.
With Mr. Welsh Senior, it was more of a discipline working atmosphere. It's not that we don't respect young Mr. Welsh, but he came to us differently, maybe because during the course of the years, he's younger, brings up new things to the company.
I had always been saying to my father, when working in London, you need to do this and you need to do that. And he said, I've done it. If you want to do it, you come on. So when I got married and Penny and I came back, we started planning for the future. We acquired extra space.
Some people think it's a bit strange that I work with my husband and we sit in the same office together, but he has his job running the business and I have my job managing the merchandise, doing all the buying and bringing the stock into the shop.
My wife and I head it up. I deal with all things financial, administrative, as I say, long term. She runs the whole buying team. She has a buying team of 6, and she buys for both Gibraltar and for Spain. And then we have our general manager is Chris Walker, who's a guy who came for 2 years to help me from M&S. He was attached to me for 2 years.
I first came to Gibraltar 20 years ago, almost to the day. And I was sent here originally by Marks & Spencer in the UK. And I was sent out here to Gibraltar to help the Marks & Spencer franchise here in Gibraltar implement some new systems and give a bit of commercial expertise. And most importantly, during my attachment here in Gibraltar, I met my wife, and our preference at the end of my 2-year attachment would be to try and continue to work here in Gibraltar if possible. So I used all my charm and wit to persuade Tony and Penny to take a bit of a gamble and employ me permanently here in Gibraltar as a member of staff with York Limited.
The buck stops with me because I've got to come up with the budget and the money if we're going to do something. Penny spends the money on buying the goods, and Chris will then just make sure that we're spending the money correctly on salaries and the right number of people, and that everything is happening as it should be. Snapshots, photos, it's one of those things when you're trying to pull something together, you don't actually know what's there until you start digging, and I just went digging through a whole load of boxes in my parents' flat and came up with some bits and pieces. From 67, 68 when this business was started, some cuttings of the Gibraltar Chronicle, trade license application, had to go to Council of Ministers in those days because you had to have a Gibraltarian majority partner. And Pepper came in with my father to be that majority partner. And so when we opened, we had a big reception up at the Rock Hotel, and this is Pepe Bentata with his wife, my mother, my father.
Popular opening.
Yes, it was quite something at the time. There wasn't a lot going on. The frontier difficulties were just beginning. Because we couldn't use the name Marks & Spencer, we traded as York Limited. St. Michael was the brand, and it was always York Limited of Gibraltar. The escalator, 1983, made quite a bit of news in Gibraltar. It was the first. We didn't know what we were doing. We made a few mistakes. We nearly didn't get it through the building because it got stuck.
It doesn't quite fit there.
No, we had to take the handrails off and chip some of the plaster away. But we got there in the end, and it is still in today, working, and apart from it broke down yesterday, but I mended it.
This is just a snapshot of some of the girls in the loading bay, and amazing. When I look at it now, pensioner still with us, pensioner. Rosalind just about to retire this in January. Another pensioner, still with us. Just nothing much. We did our 25 years. We threw a party. We quite like a party every now and then. Had a fashion show. It was quite good because it was sort of the last time really before Pepe died that he could. Pepe Bentata came as sort of a guest of honour and sat there. Yeah. We had a big dinner at the casino, which followed that. Oops. This was 25 years coincided with obviously a gold watch presentation for two of our employees who'd been with us from the beginning. 86 we opened a children's shop in Young Sparks, called Young Sparks, in what is now Early Learning Centre. Yeah. That's Special Olympics. We tend to concentrate and stick with anything of charity rather than just scattergun everywhere. So we've been with Special Olympics from day one. As I said, we used to party a lot. When times were good, we used to have a summer barbecue, and we'd take over what was then the Coletto Palace. Oh no, the other tradition is really it's retirements. I mean, this was a summer party. These are retirements. So Aurelia Cini, one of our first founder members of staff, retired. So this is a bit of another tradition. I think we've got one coming up one or two again next year.
More than 12 million people coming to Gibraltar to do business, to buy, etc. When cruise passengers come, when visitors arrive, they like to buy in well-known high street brands, Marks and Spencer's being one of them. And because also we have top executives of e-gaming companies, of insurance, of banks, of other financial services industries, them and their wives or their partners will want to be able to buy the brands that they will be able to buy in a high street in London. So it is important that wherever we can, Gibraltar does attract recognised high street names.
The general change in retailing in the world, which is affecting Gibraltar to the same degree, that Gibraltar is not quite so special. Spain are leading retailers in the world, and we have to share the market with a much bigger area. We also have the business in Marbella, which we almost opened at completely the wrong time, just as Spain was going into recession. So all these factors do play on us.
Business in Gibraltar is all right, could be better. The internet is affecting sales. People do a lot of shopping online now, and that affects our business here. So we have to try and be one step ahead of everybody else, and we have to make their shopping experience enjoyable.
Now the challenge is slightly different. The challenge, we've gone from a company 45 years ago with probably 9 or 10 employees. We employ about 96 at the moment. The challenge is keeping the business going to support all of those costs, and that is getting more and more difficult, and that is probably the current challenge at the moment.
This is a family business. It would be nice if one of my children would come back and help us to run it, but I don't see it happening at the moment, so I don't see what's going to happen in the long term. We'll just have to wait and see.
I've lived, like many other people, a life of slight insecurity. You know, born in Morocco, had to get out, didn't know anything about it, I was too young. Enjoyed living in Spain in Campamento, 6, 7 years old. Suddenly, I'm no longer living in a nice big house, I'm living in one room in a hotel. It's sort of the reinvention. Then we rented a small flat in Gibraltar. The frontier then closed. Then we started business, did quite well. The frontier's reopened. It's a little bit the roller coaster of never knowing what is happening, and still today we have the uncertainty, the politics between Spain, Britain, Gibraltar, which are always hanging there, and you're never 100% sure what your future is going to be. And that for me is a shame that 45 years of my life have been tied up with politics through no control of our own, really.
Lovely girl, won't you stay with me?
Marks and Spencer's in Gibraltar, a very well-organized company, a very good company to work for, and reliable, And if you give good service and you're a good worker, they'll always be there for you, that's for sure.
I don't know, I think if I was to think about it, I will come back again tomorrow.
You would have been forgiven for thinking that the successful international brand that is Marks & Spencer one day decided to open on Gibraltar's main street and that it's been plain sailing since. But that's not how it happened. We've seen how the Welshers had to uproot their lives in Morocco, the challenges they faced when they opened the business during the closed frontier years, and how they've grown and nurtured a successful business where many Gibraltarians have built successful and rewarding careers. Join us next week when we take a close look at another iconic local business with real heritage.